Good morning. Well, it's dawn and I'm walking along the Cotswold Way on Maiden Hill, just above the cottage where I live. Over to my right, over there, if you look behind me, you can see where the sun is just starting to come up over Bisley. This is a path I walk a lot. It's somewhere I've been a lot during lockdown. I used it probably every day at periods of time when that was just about the only thing that we were allowed to do, and I'm still using it now on a regular basis. This path on Maiden Hill forms part of the Cotswold Way, and it's what I think of as one of the ancient ridgeways that we have that run along the tops of many of the hills around here. And I always think with interest about how these were once the motorways of their days, in the times when the Vale, so over to my left the River Severn Vale, and to my right the steep valleys of the Stroud valleys would have been flooded and impassable in winter, and people had to get around using these hilltop routes in order to keep out of the quagmire and the marsh that would have been pretty much impassable. Through most of my life, I think a sense of place has been profoundly important. I've only ever lived in Stroud. I've never been anywhere else for more than a few weeks. I've always felt the need to stay rooted here and have taken a lot of comfort from that. And from places like this, where I am now, I can see nearly my whole life. I can see the hospital where I was born, I can see the schools I went, the house I grew up in, where I live now. Pretty much most things, most life events I can see within these few miles, looking down from this hill and the others around it. And I think for lots of us, in the turmoil of the last year, of COVID, of our own health being affected, and you might still hear I'm still a little bit out of breath after my second episode of COVID this summer, and all the things we have going on in our personal lives, and a real concern about our planet and what we're doing to it, then being somewhere like this just for a few moments and feeling connected to where we live and where is important to us and the things around us. So, this time of day, this is rush hour for the birds, so I've probably seen 10 times more and heard 10 times more birds than I would hear if I came out on a walk at lunchtime. So the fascination and comfort you can draw from nature in all of that turmoil, I find just profound. A quotation I use a lot is by someone called JBS Haldane, who said, "The world shall not perish for lack of wonders, but for lack of wonder." The world shall not perish for lack of wonders, but for lack of wonder. That, to me, feels like a profoundly prophetic statement, something which just cuts truth through all of the nonsense and the froth that we listen to, that we are subject to, and that, dare I say, sometimes some of us might propagate. I think, for me, that sense of wonder at what's around us is perhaps the thing that we need to cultivate, the thing that might cure us from where we are. As many of you will know, I'm a mental health nurse by trade, and I'm really interested in how we can use nature and the planet to help people recover from episodes of serious mental illness in particular, but all types of mental distress. And I read a book a while ago called Bird Therapy by Joe Harkness, and he urged us to really look with fascination at birds, and he uses the dunnock as a really good example. And the dunnock, for those of you that know it or don't know it, is a small bird that hops around in the hedge. It's brown, it's unremarkable. There are some remarkable things about it, about how it lives its life, but I'll spare those for another occasion. But the point about the dunnock is it looks like a fairly drab and dreary browny grey bird until you look at it closely. And then, if you can get a pair of binoculars and look at one hopping around on your lawn, you will see that it is the most intricately marked bird imaginable, and you can just be completely drawn into the wonder of how the bird is marked and how it's put together. It's truly something to be celebrated in the most unremarkable type of circumstances, something you probably see 10 times a day hopping around every hedgerow you walk past. Come to a slightly different position here, so hopefully you can see where the sun is just breaking through the tree line over on the hill towards Bisley. When we think theologically and spiritually about our relationship to the earth, I think we've sometimes been led to believe, or perhaps just through omission we've begun to think, that there's scripture, Holy Scripture and spiritual practice doesn't have a great deal to say. And yet I'm often struck by the fact that in the creation narrative, Adam was formed literally of the earth, and in fact that's what the name Adam means. It means of the earth. And as I contemplate the sunrise over there, we often think of Jesus as being light of the world, and absolutely, and that's a really profound symbolic image. But of course also the name he referred to himself most often was as Son of Man, which is derived in Hebrew from Adam being man and Adam being of the earth. So when Jesus talks of himself as being the Son of Man, he's also saying that he is the Son of the earth. I'm not sure that I, and perhaps many of us, have thought about that quite enough in terms of what that really means. I'm now a bit further along the track. I've walked into Randwick Woods. We're still on the ridgeline, on the high point of the hill, and the sun is now actually too bright to look over in that direction. Now, as you can see, it's coming through the beech trees at me, that real bright fiery amber colour. And this path's called Robber's Road, and I can remember when I was young you could still get along it. It wasn't fenced, you could drive a car along it, not that I know anyone that did, but it was still a proper road, and now it's a National Trust path. I don't know the origin of the name Robber's Road. We can imagine, probably designed to keep people away from it after dark. But we're just walking up to a piece of quarry workings now, and then above that the thing that we've come to see, which is one of the most amazing things around these villages anyway, I think, which is an ancient long barrow, so a 4,500 year old burial mound. It's on the highest point of the hill, so we can imagine perhaps when it was built, many of the trees that we see here probably weren't around. They'd have been felled and used for housing and firewood, etc. It would have given a brilliant vantage point. You would have been able to see right across into Wales, right out into the Bristol Channel, and of course all across the Stroud valleys and north up to probably into Shropshire actually, but we see Clee Hill on a good day. So we're just climbing up the long barrow now. The experts say it's about 4 metres in height, so that's I think sort of 50 metres long. That's an awful lot of work workings and soil and stone to bring in to create the mound. But one of the things I love really about being here on this point is that it's one of the few places where you're kind of in amongst the trees. You're not quite looking over them, but you are looking into them, which I think, particularly at this time of day, we've probably missed the last of the owls now, but half an hour ago we might have been lucky enough to see a tawny owl perched on a branch, contemplating packing up and heading home. So I wanted to finish this short film this morning using one of my favourite poems, and I've already asked for your indulgence with my favourite quotation, and this is certainly one of my favourite poems, and depending on when you ask me, I may well say it is my favourite, and certainly when I'm somewhere like this I would say it is my favourite, and it's called The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars, waiting with their light for a time. I rest in the grace of the world and am free.